Jazz make their first waiver move. Could a woman coach in the NBA? BYU heads to Notre Dame. Utah goes to Oregon State in a top 10 road weekend for the college football teams. It's all coming up on today's edition of Tip Off. Boom, 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 boom. Is it possible that my guy Tim Lincecum is actually just done, finished, over? Boom, 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 poof. It's amazing in baseball right now because careers are taking natural paths again and not having slumps and somehow miraculously coming out of them or being good at age 35. Boom, 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 boom. Says Lance Armstrong isn't supplying steroids anymore. Boom, 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 boom. My drums are awesome. I bet you didn't know this, but I've never played the drums. How you doing? Welcome to Tip Off. The video of yesterday's Tip Off might get up at some point. The problem is with the new high-definition camera, I actually did a very high resolution, and then it just never uploads. It takes forever. Hope you're well. Most of the major topics in regarding the Jazz I thought we discussed yesterday. Yesterday, the guys had the day off, and they went and did the route, hit the streets. Really cool. I know a lot of people got to see the Jazz players around town. They went to various malls and various places, and hopefully you got some interaction with the guys and have experienced what I've learned so far this year, which is that we have just got a really, really special group of guys. I mean, just good dudes all the way around, which, you know, I know you want them to win basketball games, but it is nice when they represent your team well and they and they have the right approach and all of those things as well. And these guys certainly have that, and they're high-quality guys. I think that also will help the team this year. In a lot of these questions about what happens because of this and what happens because of that and free agency this and playing on a contract and fighting for minutes, and guys are going to get upset. But we don't have bad guys. We don't have guys that are going to cause problems, I think. We don't have guys that I believe are going to try to disrupt things if they're not getting the time they want. I think they'll be upset because they're competitors. But, I mean, if you even follow Randy Foye last year, like, Vinny Del Negro yanked him all the way around. All of a sudden, like, at times didn't play. And, excuse me. Sorry. Got a little bug. And at times, Randy Foye didn't cause any problems at all. So I think that's a good indicator of what we have this year with this team, which is important. First roster moves were made yesterday. Chris Quinn and Darnell Jackson survived the first cut as Brian Butch and Trey Gilder were cut. And that's because the Jazz like these two guys. I don't know if they make the roster. I wouldn't be stunned on the Quinn end because the backup point guard situation is just – well, it's not really the backup point guard. The issue is really if we look at Mo Williams' career – the Jazz have to be projecting this year that Mo Williams is going to play 62, 63, 64 games. He does not stay healthy and has not. And so then the Jazz have got to figure out if Mo Williams misses a game, are you going Jamal Tinsley with Randy Foye for the whole game? Do you need another guy there? How long until Earl Watson's knee is right? Some things there, and Chris Quinn can play. Darnell Jackson is interesting. For a while in camp, I began to wonder if Jeremy Evans was not guaranteed, and they had their choice between Jeremy Evans and Darnell Jackson, who would get the job. Jeremy played much better in his last outing and probably has eliminated that thought. I mean, it was just a thought. I'm not saying it was a fact. It was just one of those things where you didn't have the feeling Jeremy had taken the next step. Darnell's a big body who at least had the body size to be able to do some things. Jeremy played better in that last game against the Clippers, which, it's nice to see. There's on the good guy end of things, there's nobody better than Jeremy, and Jeremy's got to figure a way to play without the size and still have an impact on the game. The highlights are fabulous, but the highlights don't tell a story of a player. I mean, Ronnie Price was probably the greatest example of that. He'd have a highlight and then have 5 mistakes, and you just remember the highlight, and so you thought he was really good. So we'll see. We'll see how that plays. But I don't – those two guys have both played very well, I guess is my point. They both have been impressive, and the team might as well hold on to them For all we know, there's a deal coming down the line. One of those guys ends up making the team. If Darnell Jackson becomes your fifth big in some scenario, that'd be fine. Chris Quinn becomes your third point guard, you'd be fine. They both have that experience and have earned that, and that's where we stand. Otherwise, here for now, we have 3 more games. We'll play tomorrow against the Clippers, Monday in Portland, and then Thursday. I suspect starting tomorrow, we'll see a pretty regular rotation to what we're going to see. That I would suspect that Saturday and Monday are pretty long rotations, and I would suspect we see 30-minute nights out of some guys now. But things open up a little bit more for some of these guys because, and then that Thursday, coaches get a little sketchy. But the Jazz are interesting because we play the 22nd Monday and then only play that last preseason game home Thursday the 25th before starting the season on the 31st. We start on the second day of the NBA season, not the first, though the first is usually a bunch of TV games. And it means that also without a travel date in between, the Jazz have 5 days of practice. It's almost as though they have a second little mini training camp that will take place. And, somehow the Jazz coaching staff is going to have to be very careful to get guys physically where they need to be and not wear out the legs. I mean, a training camp killed these guys' legs. Ty had them just boom. And these guys' legs were dead there for a while. And we saw the back-to-back games, Oklahoma City, LA, and the day off on the 14th brought everyone's legs back. Then they played 2 games, got a day off. So everyone's legs are back to where they need to be. Then you got to take them through training camp. Fascinating article by Kate Fagan in ESPNW about this Japanese woman, American, but Japanese descent, who is friends with Earl Watson, who played at UCLA, must have been around when Earl played, who wants to coach in the NBA and is actually working now as a video coordinator for the Clippers. Her story is that she played at UCLA, played a little overseas, and actually went to Japan and caught up with Bob Hill, who I worked with, former Spurs coach, former Sonics coach. There couldn't have probably been a better person for her to catch up with Bob Hill. He loves to teach. He loves to coach. He's been given a label of being an egotist and being self-absorbent and things of that nature in his career. I dealt with him, thought he was I had good relations with him. I understand where people come with that criticism of him, but that's irrelevant in this story. In this story, he loves to teach, and so this is the right guy. And so this woman kind of caught in, followed him around, and is trying to figure it out now being a video coordinator. And the thought is, could a woman coach in the NBA? And truly, the NBA is the best of any of the sports leagues in, racial diversity and things of in that sort. But the overall sexism against women in male sports is pretty high. I mean, if you really get into it, is there any reason why a woman couldn't be an umpire? Why we only have one female official? We're close to having another. We had another work the other day. There's nothing physically. There's nothing physically preventing the women from being able to do it. There's nothing mentally being able to prevent the women from doing it. There's nothing skills-wise or preventing the women from doing it. It's just we've just decided that that's just not something they do, and it's pretty wrong. And frankly, the same thing goes to coaching. The idea that these guys have to have a male coach when for most of their lives, a huge percentage of them were lacking a father figure. And the dominant authoritative figure in many of their lives was a mother or a grandmother. Why wouldn't that work again? I've worked in the women's league. I've seen women coaches. They're as good. At times they're not as good. Some are X's and O's coaches. Some are creative. Same thing. Some of them are very good. Some of them aren't. But so I have that feeling every night in the NBA where some of these coaches are very good and some of them aren't. Some of them really aren't very good. And you see that with some regularity. In the women's game, I worked with one, for those of you who follow the WNBA, in Utah, who wasn't very good. I worked with one in Seattle who might be the best coach I've ever worked with. There's absolutely no reason why a woman couldn't add something to a staff on the bench as an assistant and eventually be a head coach in this league. There's just no legitimate, in my opinion, the guys wouldn't listen to her. That's just garbage. And it's the same thing, really, if you look at a lot of these sports, and particularly the game of basketball where the women play it. It's a different game, but there's still fundamentals that are the same. And frankly, if we look around the league, there have been plenty of coaches who have been very successful who didn't play it. So it's a very good article by Kate Fagan, ESPNW. This woman's an interesting story. Maybe the most interesting, she got offered a job with the UCLA women's team, and she bypassed it because her dream is to coach in the NBA. And I thought it brought up the question of, why not? And, unless you guys are going to give me a reason, I'm having a hard time with any legitimate why not reason. A few other thoughts for you. Let's go NFL for a second. I have always believed in the NFL that the best quarterback in the division is who wins. Just go look at the standings today and go look at each division and find me the best quarterback in the division, and then that's who's going to win the division. And it almost always holds true. And it's holding true pretty well right now. Also, and I think, Minnesota's playing well, but Aaron Rodgers is better. And everybody, when you look at the Green Bay Packers record, please put a win, take one loss away and put a win on, and then you can evaluate who they are as a team. People have forgotten that they got robbed. We would be looking at them differently. So you do that, it gets me to the NFC West, where we watched the Niners and the Seahawks last night. And it's really a division without a quarterback. Everyone's talking about how great the defenses are, and they are pretty good. They're very good. But it's a division without a quarterback. Alex Smith is probably the best quarterback in that division if Kevin Kolb isn't. And it's certainly not Russell Wilson, and it's certainly not Sam Bradford, who has regressed. But really, that's almost a division without a great quarterback. Alex Smith was not good enough last night for the Niners to go be a Super Bowl caliber team. That I thought was clear. As good as the Seahawks are, he's still, Brady made mistakes and the Seahawks beat New England, but Brady was playing at a higher level than Alex Smith, and that's not, you don't have to be Tom Brady, though Tom Brady's not Tom Brady this year. But that's kind of where we are. My thought on that. It's too bad. He's better. But you can see the Niners this year trying to open it up more, trying to let him do more, and I'm not sure it's there. And those wide receivers couldn't get free last night, and so they adjusted well in the second half and gashed things well in the running game. And so maybe not all that should be on Alex, but there's some level where Alex has got to make some more plays than he made. How about that Oregon-Arizona State game? Boy, is Utah just glad they have not played Oregon the last 2 years. This is crazy. We did a Q2 guys on the 12 basically about Oregon and what they've done. They're just on a different planet. I mean, she's just it's just absolutely a completely different animal. And anyone who's, if they played in the SEC, shut up, they'd score. If you go back and look at them, when they have played the SEC, they've played the best team in the country, who also has shut down all the SEC teams. And is a superior defensive team and blows up their defense. That's the only way you can get to these guys is if you blow up their defensive line and disrupt their angles and their timing. Otherwise, they're done. So you blow up their offensive line with your defensive line. Otherwise, you're done. BYU to Notre Dame. Obviously, I watched Notre Dame a lot last week because they played Stanford. Stanford plays Cal this week in the big game in the middle of October. Pac-12 TV network sucks. Notre Dame's offense is not a wow factor. BYU's defense should have a decent day, even after getting torched by Oregon State. But that offense is not a wow factor. That defense is, and it's led by Monte Te'o. He's just unbelievable, and should win the Heisman. I mean, he's the best player I've seen in college football week in and week out. It's just fabulous. I don't know how BYU is going to score in this game. And BYU's offensive line, which has been a year in and year out disappointment, I think is going to have just a jailbreak day. And I don't know how they're going to be able to handle that, because Stanford's offensive line is really progressing and getting better, and they had a very, very hard time making enough plays in that area. I don't, if Riley can get it going and get them 11 on 11, I don't think BYU wins most of those battles. That's the difference. When Riley gets it going and you're playing 11 on 11, so everyone's have their individual matchups. When it works is when you win those matchups. I don't know how BYU wins those matchups in that in this game. And if BYU's defense doesn't hold, then we have to reevaluate BYU's defense. This is, Oregon State's pretty good offensively. Backup quarterback, they torched them pretty good. And now I think you have to look at the next level and say, okay, they should be able to hold this game there. I mean, Stanford's defense is really strong, and they held Notre Dame down and was able to keep Notre Dame at bay. And BYU's defense should be able to do the same. Remember, Notre Dame, by definition, is vastly overrated. The minute they win a few games, the country jumps on it. Everyone wants them to be good. They're not the fifth best team in the country. There's no way they are. Watch that. And Stanford's not terrific. And Stanford played with them every step of the way and should still be playing with them right now. On the other level, Utah goes to Oregon State. This is Travis Wilson indoctrinated to the playing on the road in two kind of interesting places. Oregon's the hardest place to play, and there's not clearly a second most difficult place to play in this conference on the road. So these are two pretty good tests. UCLA, the Rose Bowl doesn't have the fan base, but it has a lot of people, and it's big, and it's got kind of an LA atmosphere to it. Oregon State's got some passion. Never know the weather you're going to get. There's a storm rolling through the Pacific Northwest this weekend. This is great. I thought he held himself very well against UCLA. These are the steps. But Utah doesn't have the talent, frankly, to match up on these schools. They have some positions, but the reality of what the jump is to Pac-12 has become abundantly clear. Because if Utah was playing in the Mountain West right now, they'd be the second best team. They would have beat BYU and probably lose to TCU in the old days, and everybody think everything was fine. They're probably very similar to the year in which the Terrence Kane, Jordan Wynn quarterback kind of combo went. If you look back, carried by the defense, offense was just good enough, but this is just a totally different level of play, and we're seeing it. But that's part of the progression, and there's got to be a level of understanding and patience, and there's got to be a level of understanding that most seasons are going to be 6-6. And that's, frankly, why BYU and Utah aren't playing every year, because Utah's administration knows this, and that's why they ducked out of the rivalry game, is because they just are desperate to get any win to stay close to 6-6 and 7-5, and going to BYU is, in all likelihood, a loss a lot of the time. And so, therefore, they needed a patsy game because they're terrified of how hard this conference is. That's the truth on where the rivalry went. All right, see ya.